Imagine you're holding a newborn baby. Within seconds, it starts crying. Not because it's sad, not because it's scared, but because those tears are literally helping it survive. Now here's something even stranger. Dogs whine, elephants trumpet, wolves howl, chimpanzees scream. They all experience fear. They all experience pain. They all form deep emotional bonds. Yet, as far as science knows, humans are the only animals that shed emotional tears. So, why us? Why would evolution create something that blurs our vision, exposes our emotions, and makes us look vulnerable at the exact moment we should be protecting ourselves? It doesn't seem to make any sense. Unless crying isn't a weakness at all. Unless it's one of the greatest evolutionary advantages our species has ever developed. Today, we're uncovering the incredible science behind human tears, a story that begins millions of years ago, long before cities, long before civilization, back when survival depended on every decision your ancestors made. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at tears the same way again. Let's start with something almost nobody realizes. Humans don't actually produce just one kind of tear. We produce 3 completely different types, and each one exists for a completely different reason. The first are called basal tears. You've never noticed them because they're working every second you're awake. Right now, as you're watching this video, a microscopic layer of liquid is covering your eyes. Without it, your eyes would dry out, become damaged, and eventually lose the ability to see clearly. The second type are reflex tears. These are your emergency response system. Cut an onion, get dust in your eyes, walk through smoke, or accidentally rub your eye, and suddenly tears begin pouring out. Not because you're emotional, but because your body is desperately trying to wash away anything that might damage your vision. Simple, efficient, exactly what you'd expect evolution to create. But then there's the third type, the one scientists still find fascinating: emotional tears. These appear when you're overwhelmed by sadness, happiness, grief, relief, love, or even uncontrollable laughter. And here's where everything becomes strange. Scientists have spent decades studying animals. Dogs experience anxiety. Elephants mourn their dead. Chimpanzees comfort each other after losing family members. Dolphins protect injured members of their pod. Some birds even refuse to leave the side of a lifelong partner after it dies. Animals clearly experience emotions. Deep emotions, complex emotions, sometimes emotions that look remarkably similar to our own. But despite thousands of scientific observations, researchers have never found convincing evidence that any animal naturally sheds emotional tears the way humans do. Think about that. One tiny biological difference separates every human on Earth from nearly every other creature that's ever lived. Which raises an obvious question. If emotions aren't unique to humans, then why are emotional tears? At first glance, crying almost looks like an evolutionary mistake. Imagine you're living 150,000 years ago, walking across the African savanna. Lions are nearby. Hyenas are watching. Food is scarce. Every decision matters. Now imagine your eyes suddenly fill with tears. Your vision becomes blurry. Your breathing changes. Your face becomes wet. You make sounds that attract attention. You've basically announced to every predator within earshot that you're vulnerable. That's a terrible survival strategy. Nature usually removes weaknesses like that. Evolution is ruthless. If a trait consistently gets you killed, it disappears. So why didn't crying disappear? Why has it survived for hundreds of thousands of years? The answer has almost nothing to do with surviving alone. It has everything to do with surviving together. Because unlike almost every other animal, humans didn't become Earth's dominant species because we were the fastest, the strongest, or the biggest. We became successful because we learned something far more powerful. We learned how to trust complete strangers. And surprisingly, tears may have helped make that possible. But if humans evolved emotional tears, why didn't every other intelligent animal evolve them too? After all, elephants mourn their dead, chimpanzees comfort injured members of their group, Wolves form lifelong family bonds. Dolphins have even been seen supporting sick companions so they can reach the surface to breathe. Clearly, emotions aren't unique to humans. So what makes us different? The answer may lie not in how deeply we feel, but in how deeply we depend on one another. Imagine you're living around 150,000 years ago on the African savanna. Your tribe consists of maybe 30 or 40 people. There are no permanent homes, no medicine, no extra food stored away for emergencies. Every hunt is uncertain. Every day is a gamble. In that world, surviving alone is almost impossible. If you break a leg, you can't hunt. If you become sick, you can't gather food. If a mother loses her child, the future of the entire group becomes a little more uncertain. Early Homo sapiens didn't survive because every individual was strong. They survived because the group responded whenever someone needed help. And that's where emotional tears may have offered something no roar, growl, or howl ever could. Unlike anger, which pushes others away, tears often do the opposite. They quietly signal that someone is overwhelmed, frightened, grieving, or in desperate need of support. They don't threaten the group, they invite it closer. For small bands of ancient humans, recognizing those signals could mean the difference between life and death. A crying child received protection. A grieving parent received comfort. An injured hunter received food instead of being abandoned. Over thousands of generations, groups that responded to emotional distress may simply have survived more often than groups that ignored it. That's exactly how evolution works. Not by creating perfection overnight, but by slowly favoring behaviors that improve survival generation after generation. Interestingly, scientists have never found convincing evidence that wolves, lions, elephants, or chimpanzees shed emotional tears the way humans do. They vocalize, they touch, they display body language, but emotional tears appear to be uniquely human. Why? Because no other species depends on cooperation in quite the same way we always have. Human children remain dependent for many years, far longer than almost any other mammal. That forced our ancestors to become expert caregivers, expert communicators, and eventually, expert collaborators. Emotional tears may have become one more silent tool that strengthened those bonds. And once they became part of human society, evolution had every reason to keep them. What began as a simple signal of vulnerability may have quietly become one of the traits that helped Homo sapiens outlast every other human species on Earth. But perhaps the greatest test of human emotion came when the world itself began to change. Around 120,000 years ago, the climate became colder and far less predictable. Forests disappeared, grasslands shifted, rivers dried up. Enormous ice sheets slowly expanded across much of the northern hemisphere. Food became scarce, predators became more dangerous, and scientists believe the total population of Homo sapiens may have dropped to only a few thousand breeding individuals. Our ancestors came frighteningly close to extinction. In a world like that, every member of the tribe mattered. Every experienced hunter, every skilled gatherer, every mother, every child, and every elder carrying generations of survival knowledge became incredibly valuable. A tribe couldn't afford to lose people unnecessarily. That meant recognizing fear, injury, grief, and distress as quickly as possible. Emotional tears may have become one of the clearest signals our ancestors ever developed. Unlike a scream, which could attract predators from miles away, tears could silently communicate something just as important. I need you. They strengthened trust, encouraged caregiving, and reminded the group that survival wasn't an individual achievement, it was a shared responsibility. Over thousands of generations, tribes that stayed together, protected one another, and cared for their weakest members were simply more likely to survive harsh climates, deadly diseases, and endless migrations. Those survivors became the ancestors of every person alive today. What's even more remarkable is that Homo sapiens weren't alone. The Earth was also home to Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia, and Denisovans across parts of Asia. They were intelligent. They crafted stone tools, controlled fire, hunted massive animals, and cared for injured members of their own groups. Yet despite all of that, only one human species remains. Scientists still debate exactly why Homo sapiens survived while the others disappeared, but one idea appears again and again. We formed larger social networks, cooperated with people beyond our immediate family, and shared information across generations more effectively than any other human species. Emotional tears may have quietly supported that advantage. They helped transform simple groups into connected communities, and connected communities into civilizations. That's why the answer to our original question is so fascinating. Humans aren't the only animals that feel emotions. Elephants grieve. Wolves mourn. Chimpanzees comfort one another. But as far as current scientific evidence shows, humans are the only species known to shed emotional tears. Not because we feel more deeply than every other animal, but because our survival depended on communicating those emotions in a uniquely powerful way. The first humans who cried on the African savanna could never have imagined cities, nations, or the modern world. Yet every tear they shed may have strengthened the bonds that allowed our species to survive impossible odds. So the next time tears fill your eyes, remember this: you're witnessing one of evolution's rarest achievements. A behavior shaped across hundreds of thousands of years, passed from the first Homo sapiens to you. Those tears aren't simply drops of water. They're a living connection to our ancient past, a quiet reminder that humanity's greatest strength was never our speed, our size, or our power. It was our ability to stand together. And perhaps that's the real reason humans became the only animals known to cry emotional tears.